And then the last an old story. This one I think is so interesting. So there is, when you think of single-celled organisms, you think single-celled organisms. It's a single cell. It's got whatever particular functions this single cell has, right? So amoebas. When you picture an amoeba, you just picture a little single-celled organism. Maybe it attacks things using phagocytosis, so it kind of engulfs them and then dissolves them, right? Or maybe in some situations, it'll use other mechanisms, but these amoebas do their thing. Turns out there's a species of amoeba, and there are probably more, that in certain situations, like when food is scarce, the amoeba turns into a mini animal. It becomes social. So a bunch of amoebas come together and they create a multi-celled organism in which about 80% of the organisms, 80% of the cells become spores to be able to spew out new amoebas. 20% of the cells become the stalk, kind of like a fungus, like to grow a mushroom. That 20% of the cells sacrifice themselves and become the stalk and have no reproductive effect whatsoever. 1% of the cells become immune cells and attack invaders. And, okay, so these cells, they call them sentinel cells. And they use a process, a mechanism that is very, very much like a primitive innate immune system, like one that would be used in all animals. We thought the immune system, the innate immune system, was something that evolved with multicellularity, that it evolved with animals as animals came to life. No. Now we know single-celled organisms like this amoeba have immune system functions. They can prioritize their activities to become like an organism. And so they keep their phagocytic functions. They also use their DNA. They expel their DNA, and it's like a sticky net. They call them neutrophil extracellular traps, and these nets capture bacteria outside of the cell and kill them, and then they can like drag them back in and eat them all up, absorb the bacteria. I mean, this to me, not just that 1% of the cells becomes an immune system, this is amazing on its own, and we can now use this as a model system to study the immune system. But where do we draw the line from unicellular to multicellular animal at this point in time?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it kind of brings you back to the question of why do we need to draw the line? Mm-hmm. We like to make our categories. Everything is a gray area, it turns out, in a lot of these situations. In biology, a lot of things end up being a gray area. And this might actually be the perfect missing link. I hate using that term in a lot of ways, but it could kind of be this perfect middle ground in between unicellular and multicellular organisms in a way that we haven't really thought of before. And I think it's just fascinating to see that it still happens, but not every single time. So only kind of as needed.
Right. Yeah. So they can go their own way and be their own amoeba.
Yeah. So this is something they've been doing for a long time.
So it's kind of this, and like you said, like it's the gray area there. I love the idea, thinking that, like you say, these animals, these amoebas, they choose. So it's a situational, social multicellularity. At some point in time, it was situational, and then it became obligate. What happened to make it obligate in some organisms? That's an interesting question. Yeah. So anyway, this story, I just was like, doop-de-doop amoebas, and I'm like, wow, this just blew my mind.
Fascinating.
Yes. Ben Rothig says in the chat room, so the amoebas are basically Voltroning it. Yep, pretty much. And I'll form the head.